Every time I get paid, I follow a simple routine that builds my wealth step by step. Stick around, and I'll show you exactly how you can do it too.
Most people, when they get their paycheck, they do what I used to do. You pay your bills, you take care of all your expenses, and with whatever's left, use that money for investing and building your wealth. The problem with this is, at the end of every week or month, you don't have anything left usually, and so you never get around to investing, and your wealth actually never goes anywhere. This is the strategy that I use for building my wealth and what I have used for several years, and it works very well. Personal finance isn't just about building personal wealth, but it's about relieving anxiety and stress that you feel every month towards your expenses. So you don't feel like you're stuck on a hamster wheel, fearing to lose your job, having to hit the daily grind in the commute, all of that, worried about missing your next mortgage payment. So this way, you get off of the hamster wheel. You have a sense of security, confidence, and you're actually accumulating wealth. In case we haven't met, I'm Aaron, a 20-year corporate accountant and analyst. I talk about personal finance and investing, and I've been growing my wealth steady for the last 2 decades. The very first thing that you have to do is assess your financial situation. What is your baseline? Where are you at relative to your net income and your outgoing expenses? Where do you fall? So you have to understand, what am I paying every month? What are my fixed costs and what are my variable costs? These are accounting terms. But you have to understand, okay, do I have this much for mortgage, loans, car payments? These are mandatory payments that I have to make. And what are my variable expenses? Things I can cut off or at the very least reduce and play with. When we get our paycheck, we get tricked into thinking that we're richer than we actually are, right? We get paid and we think, oh wow, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna buy this, I can get that. You don't have that much money when you think about it. After you've paid all your expenses and bills, at the end of every month, how often are you saying, oh, I guess I'll have to put this on a credit card, or I don't know, I thought I could afford that, but I can't this month. And well, I have no more money for investing. But at the start, you get tricked because you see this big lump sum paycheck, but it depends. In that first 10 minutes you have your paycheck, what you do with it. This determines where the rest of your money is going to go, how you manage your money. Because the very first thing, the first person you're going to pay is, well, it's not Costco or Netflix. It's not even your bank. It's the government. They're going to come in and say, okay, I know Mr. Aaron isn't going to have any more money at the end of the month. So guess what? I'm taking 1/3 to 1/4 of his paycheck right off the start.
You have a debt to pay.
So we want to reduce those taxes as much as we can. Well, I'll get into exactly how to do that in a bit. You want to have a budget. Now, ideally, you want about 50 to 55, 60% of your net income going towards your fixed mandatory expenses. So your mortgage, your bills, your housing, your transportation, your utilities, all those mandatory bills that you have to pay that you pretty much can't do without. 50 to 60% going towards that. Then you have 20 to 30% for discretionary spending. So this would be dining out, going out, family and entertainment activities, even buying certain clothing items, non-essential to mandatory items that you need that are part of your monthly purchases, but that fall at, well, your discretion. This is what I did at the start because I started looking at creating a budget. I know, it's a snooze fest. Hard to ask you,
how much money do you need right now every month to relieve financial anxiety?
500, 1,000, 2,000. Most people, oh, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000. Like they're guessing, they have no clue. So you have to say, okay, where am I coming up short and in what areas? And what can I play with? What can I maybe do without? What subscriptions can I cancel? And some things you think, oh, I need this. And then you do without it like I did for a month or two. And you're like, well, I actually didn't need it. It was more of like a nice to have, a perk. And I'll give you one key financial tip. Many things are negotiable to a certain extent. Even your home insurance. I saved about $1,200 in 1 year just by negotiating my homeowner's insurance. How I did that is I called up my insurance company. I said, you know what? This is outrageous. $2,400, $2,500 for the house we live in. It's just ridiculous. Like, I can't afford this. I'm gonna go to another insurance company. I just want to know the steps towards closing my account. And I was prepared to do it. And oh, hold on, sir, hold on. No. And they got on, put me on hold. They came back after 15, 20 minutes. The guy, said, oh, okay. So what I was able to do for you, sir, is we were able to reduce it from $2,400 to $1,200. So does that make you happy? That's within your new budget? And I'm like, oh, well, that's a lot better.
Why could you adjust it now?
Oh, well, just, we did some reconstruction and everything like that. No need to worry. So what changed in my policy? Oh, nothing. Okay, so nothing changed, but I'm paying $1,200 less. So you could infer, okay, Aaron was a sucker for 3-4 years while he was paying that overpriced insurance. Yeah, I was. But I learned from my mistakes, and I learned quickly. So create your budget, create your fixed essential column, 50 to 60%, your discretionary spending, 20 to 30%, and then ideally your savings and investing, 10 to ideally 20% of your net income. The third thing to do is to start creating a security blanket account, an O account, better known as an emergency fund. You want to start with ideally 2 months in the beginning, 2 months of your net income for expenses in case of an emergency. You have a leaky roof, your car needs fixing, all of this. I'm sure most people have heard of emergency funds, but having this fund, which I set up years ago, will help reduce your financial anxiety because you're like, oh, if my car breaks down, I'm in a panic. Okay, no, I have my emergency fund. Think of it this way. You lose your job, right? You go on EI. What happens for those first 6 weeks that when you're applying for EI, do you get it right away? No, you gotta wait. You gotta wait for the crappy government to give you your money. And I've always asked and wondered, asked other people, including my dad, why does the government always not pay you for that first 6 weeks? Like, you need money, you've just been laid off, you need that flow, that income in cash. Why don't they pay you? Well, that's the government for you. Like, well, that's not an answer. And I even asked EI, I'm like, why don't you guys pay for the first 6 weeks? That's just policy. Whatever. Okay.
Bummer.
Okay, don't pay. So you have to come up with money somehow, right? You lose your job, bingo, you got that buffer. It's right there for you. The fourth thing to do is to start prioritizing your debt repayments. You want to pay off high interest debt first, because this is the thing that's really hurting and crippling you. So high interest debt would be considered anything from 6 to 8%. Usually this would be credit cards, but also includes lines of credits, personal loans, maybe even student loans to a certain extent. Usually car loans and mortgages fall into the lower of that category. You'll never generate, or almost never, an investment higher than 6 to 8% usually. So your best bet is to get rid of that 10, 12% interest that those credit cards, all of that are charging you. Get rid of it. And the two ways to do this are either the snowball method or the avalanche method. Now, most people prefer the avalanche method. This is the method that tackles the debt with the highest interest rate first. So if you have a credit card at 16 or 14%, you go after this one first. You focus on the lower interest rate debts later. Tackle the debts with the highest interest rate first, and then start working your way down. The avalanche method is good and makes mathematical sense. Then there is the snowball method. This is taking the debt with the lowest balance and tackling that one first. So say you have a small student loan line of credit, whatever, at $1,000, $2,000, but it's less than all your other balances, you tackle that one first. Then it's like a small win. You tackle those small wins and move on to larger balances and tackle the bigger wins later. I myself like the snowball method. It doesn't make mathematical sense. I understand that. The avalanche method is the way to go. And either one can work. However, I find with the snowball method, I like those small wins. As long as when you pay off that credit card, whatever, you keep it at zero. You don't go back to it. It is done. In the past, that's what's worked for me, is like, yeah, one down. Okay, on to the next one. Whereas sometimes with the avalanche method, you'll be paying for a while until you start to see results. But mathematically, it makes more sense. Now, if you have savings, you want to use, in most cases, those savings to pay down that high interest debt, usually just the high interest debt. Why? Because your savings account is usually not generating a lot of interest, a return on investment. Even if it's in a high yield savings account, you'll be generating 2 to 3%, but your high interest is charging you 10 to 14%. It's better to use that money and pay down that high interest debt, provided that you don't reaccumulate that debt. You don't pay it down, say it's a credit card, and then suddenly start racking up the debt again. Take that savings, apply it to the debt, pay it off, and then leave it. However, my wife has a different opinion. I can see the logic behind this. She says, I never use my savings. I keep tackling the debt, trying to pay it down, and she does. But she says those savings will never come back. You keep those savings because once they're gone, then your savings are gone. So it's like kind of her emergency fund. I could see the logic behind that. Now here is where I said we come back to number 5, employment, investment, and matching accounts. So we want to take advantage and lower what the government is taking away from us in taxes. This can be usually RRSPs or eventually maybe even TFSAs. Both have their pros and cons. I'll start a chart right here on the benefits of each. But ideally, you want to start taking advantage of all those tax incentive government programs. You want to use those. Why? Because they're reducing your taxable net income. And this is setting aside money for your retirement and helping you build wealth. So employer matching programs. Anytime an employer offers to match whatever you contribute, you should almost always max out on that. So if you contribute 5% of your take-home pay and they match you 5%, that's a 100% return on your investment. There is no investment anywhere that you'll generate that kind of return, 100%. So always max out whatever you can. Even some employers offer 50 or 20% of what you contribute. That's better than nothing, even that. So that's a 20 or 30% return on your investment. So again, still max out on that contribution as much as you can. So 3 things for homework for you to consider and to ask your employer about. 1, what are you contributing right now? What are you contributing and what are they matching currently? 2, well, what's the maximum they'll match or contribute? So if you contribute 5%, 10% of your take-home pay, what do they contribute? And 3, what are they investing your money in? Like, just don't say, oh, okay, you take it and throw it to some investment. Usually they let you tailor pick, okay, well, this is my risk level. These are my retirement goals. This is what I was planning or hoping to have when I retire. And the company, the group sponsored RSP program will usually come out with a incentivized matching program, tailoring it to your specific financial requirements. Paying yourself first method is so important. I cannot stress that enough. Many people will say, oh, I can't afford that. I have no money to pay myself first. Then unfortunately, if that's your mentality, you're going to be broke at the end of every month, and 20, 30 years, you'll have no money. I know it's difficult. It's a challenge. I was there. I understand how hard it is. But when you start setting aside 10%, then 15, and eventually 20% of your net income, your take-home pay aside every month for building wealth and for investing, you'll start finding where to get that money. You'll start making adjustments because you have nothing pushing you to make those adjustments now. You'll just, oh, I'll pay all my bills and then whatever's left, I'm going to invest. You will have almost nothing. I guarantee it because I was there. You will have almost nothing. So once you start doing that and setting aside 10 to 20% of your take-home pay, you will find where to get that money from. And if not, then at least you know, I need to make more money or I have to downsize. I have to shift something. I want you to start early and start aggressively saving and investing. Now, in all fairness, there are fees that these group RSPs charge you. And that's why I'm a big proponent of becoming your own financial advisor and investor. But overall, these fees, well, they'll still be better than, because of the tax incentives, than if you took out and tried investing as a new beginner on your own. I've been investing for about 20, 25 years now, and I think it's safe to say I know my stuff. If this all sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing to my channel. Number 6, it's time to adjust your security blanket account or your OAP account to 3 to 6 months. Bring it up from 2 months to 3 to 6 months. Or if you're in the tech industry, oil and gas, like I was, things such as that are high volatility, kind of unstable, aim for 9 to 12 months of savings. Having the security blanket in place is so important. Look at your income coming in, your spending, and say, okay, am I on track? Am I falling off track? Where am I falling off track and why? And reassess your financial situation. Say, okay, am I spending too much here? Can I cut this out here? Do I have to move? Can I do without my car? Or should I just sell my car and ride a bike? Am I eating out too much? You know, the typical things that many people are accused of doing. Sometimes they do, other times they just have to downsize or cut back on other things. Do you need 3 streaming services? You know, do you need that coffee? But most times it's from those 3 big factors: housing, transportation, food. Those are the 3 big expenses that hit everybody every month. Of course, your streaming service, your cup of coffee, it'll affect your bottom line, but not as much as those 3. Housing, food, transportation, the big main 3. Okay, number 7. This is where the road kind of divides. So either you have some extra money and you can start investing, get into tax advantaged investment accounts. So maxing out your RSP, TFSA, and once you've maxed those out, you want to look into taxable accounts. So you want to start investing ETFs, index funds. Those are the absolute best place to start for beginners. I made a great video in steps towards investing what you should focus on, which I'll link up above. Ideally, you want to focus on RSP, TFSA, FHSA, taxable accounts, and then move into the non-taxable accounts after these are exhausted. So RSP, TFSA, FHSA, you want to max out these, then move into the taxable accounts. So index funds, ETFs, those are the two absolute best places to start for beginners. So if you don't know anything about investing, go with index funds, ETF, exchange traded funds. You hardly have to do anything but continually invest into the accounts. So set up automated payments to go into these accounts. It's streamlined. You reduce the risk of, oh, I'll miss a month of contributing work. Set it up so it's automated. It's automatically going into each one of these accounts. Then you're all set. But say path 2, you don't have enough money at the end of this process to begin investing. This is where it's time to sit down and have a frank, in-depth conversation with yourself and say, okay, I just got to make more money or severely cut back on my expenses. Most times people say, okay, I just need to make more money. So I need to start a side hustle, all of that. So look into pursuing a side hustle, secondary job, various things. What can you do to bring in additional income? Because you need to increase your financial retirement savings. And the final step is once you've started playing with and investing in savings or getting that second job, and you have a little bit of money left over, this is your fund account. So ideally, this is 5 to 10%. I'm a little bit more strict than other channels. I say 5 to 10%, but you don't want to be, oh, I'm saving till I'm 60, 65, and then I can finally play. I can enjoy my money when I'm old and gray and I can't go anywhere. No, start playing now. But the problem with that is most people get carried away. Oh, I did this. Now I want to go here. Now I want to buy this. No, cut it off at a certain point. And you know what that is, because you're saying no to your future self in the future, 20, 30 years from now, saying, I know that would have probably amounted to a $50,000 investment, but I'm taking this $2,000 and I'm buying that big screen TV I want, or I am going on that trip because I need to go. Maybe you do. You have to live a little bit, but consider what you're saying yes and no to. So if you think about the long-term impact, as long as it's worth doing without in 20, 30 years, what that investment could have grown into, then go for it. But really consider the long-term implications. But then again, I am for people living and enjoying the wealth that they have and not just sitting on the couch drinking water, right? What kind of life is that? Sit on the couch and drink water. You don't go anywhere. You got to have some fun and enjoy life now while you can. But just don't go overboard. So if you feel like you got something out of this video, would you do me a favor and hit the like button, as it really helps out my channel with the YouTube algorithm. Much appreciated. If you're curious about where 90% of your returns come from in your investment portfolios, it's not from stock picking. Click this next video here to find out the answer.